Welcome, everyone. Happy Thursday night or Friday morning, depending on when you're watching this. Friday midday, Friday evening, who knows? But hope you guys are doing well and excited for St. Patrick's weekend. Hope you guys have some fun with your friends, families, loved ones. Even if you're going to be by yourself, have some fun. But yeah, we got a nice little 6 game slate here on DraftKings for Friday night. Going to be talking through the 6 game slate, kind of breaking down each game, who I like, who I don't like, throwing them in early look player pool. As always, injury news does change every entire slate. So I would say, just wait until about 15, 30 minutes before the slate starts to get all your injury news and then make your lineups. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Let's get right into it. Right now, there are no odds for these games tomorrow. Once again, recording this pretty early in the night. The first couple games have just started. And for tonight, this is my lineup I went with. So we got the news that we got the Clippers news, and obviously everyone kind of thought, Kawhi, is he going to play? Is he going to not? Paul George, Harden, everyone thought was going to play. Ended up being the opposite. Ended up being Harden getting ruled out and Kawhi being ruled in. So with that in mind, and them saying that Bones Highland was going to start, loaded up on Bones Highland here. I'm surprised he wasn't a little bit higher owned here. Only 4.1K. Got this. He was getting the start coming in. He's doing really well, as you can see here. Already has 12 fantasy points, so doing really, really solid there. Surprised Io wasn't a little bit higher owned here as well, just because there is no Kobe White. Going to be taking over that lead point guard role there alongside Caruso. Going to be a lot more aggressive offensively. He had a solid first quarter. Not really sure how he's shooting right there. And then obviously with Luka being ruled out, wanted to load up on Kyrie there, as well as, where does he go? Tim Hardaway Jr. Kind of the main scores there when when Luka's out are those two. So want to load up there. Obviously, you have Kawhi there, who had a really good first quarter. Super surprised about the 12% ownership. Now, I know there's that. I know people are probably scared of the back issue. Is he going to flare up again? Is he going to get hurt? Is he going to play, normal minutes? Yeah, that's a risk, but 8,400 against the Bulls, way too cheap there, especially coming at 12% ownership. So hopefully he has a great night there. I end up taking the shot on Zubac. I know it was a stretch. Not a great first quarter there, so hopefully you can turn it around. That'd be really nice. But obviously Kyrie also, loaded up on PJ Washington, kind of be that third scorer there. And then Devin Booker. I mean, that's just my luck. You guys already know it. Not going to tilt. 4.5% owned, 8,800. And the dude's on pace to have his worst game of the season. I mean, you guys know the deal here. You just can't possibly warn worse. But moving on to the 6 game slate, we do have Phoenix once again. They're playing tonight. So there could be one of those scenarios where they either rest Durant, Booker, or Nurkic. Or excuse me, Durant, Booker, or Beal. I think Durant should be fine. I mean, the dude's been playing unreal. He had 15 points in the first quarter tonight so far. So absolutely fantastic matchup. Obviously, there's probably going to be a little bit of blowout risk just with how bad Charlotte has been. The Suns haven't really been blowing people out. But with that in mind, obviously Durant looks fantastic here. Same thing with Beal and same thing with Booker. Once again, I prefer getting to Durant and Booker over Beal. But Beal is having really good nights. I mean, he can have solid nights. He's priced about right. So once again, interest in all three. Nurkic is an interesting GPP option. If you're trying to get very different, don't love the price tag, but we know he can usually still go for 35 plus, 40 plus, even when he only shoots like 3 or 4 times a game. Rest of the team here, just too pricey for me. There's really no need to get to anyone else. Bol Bol's like an interesting dart throw GPP option. Otherwise, it's really just sticking with the main 3 guys. Moving on to Charlotte here. Charlotte side, you just hope this game stays close. Once again, offense is going to run through Miller and Bridges. Now, they did start Man alongside Micic that last game. Micic actually did really well there. 25 points, 8 assists, 9 of 10 in 30 minutes. And then Man did not do the best there. 30 minutes, which is nice to see. 5 and 9, so it was efficient. But 10 points, 5 rebounds, didn't have any assists. So it looks like he's going to lack assist upside there if Micic starts alongside of him again. If that's the case, I think they're both fine if you land on them as kind of like last pieces. I just don't think there's a need to get to either one of them. Richard should play anywhere from mid-20s to even 30-plus minutes if he's staying out of foul trouble. You could take a shot at him. I don't hate it, but it's just not the best matchup, not the best game environment for anyone on this side. Bertans, another one of those guys, going to see mid-20s minutes. As you can see, has a very low floor if he doesn't have hit his shots. Otherwise, he can definitely get you, mid-20s fantasy points. I honestly think Poku is probably my favorite. They signed him. He played 27 minutes last game. I mean, even if this game blows out, he's still going to get run. They're going to see what they have in him. So I think Poku's probably the best play on the Charlotte side here. Moving on to Miami versus Detroit. Fantastic matchup here for Miami. So Bam and Jimmy look absolutely fantastic. I think Rozier actually looks really, really good too here. Doesn't have like a super high ceiling playing alongside these Miami guys, but still, we know he can go off if he gets a double-double there with assists. It kind of happens every once in a while, but he can go for, high assist marks there. So I think it's a solid play, kind of like a Brad Beal play there. They're solid if you land on them, but still prefer just getting to the two main guys, Bam and Jimmy. These kind of mid-range guys, you can land on them in GPPs. Like, if you land on them, I'd feel fine with that. Like Duncan, Hawkes, we know they have upside if they hit shots. It's just one of those things you got to time the game right. And obviously, it's hard to do that, but they're there. They'll play minutes. So, yeah, don't mind that. And then Jovic obviously did terrible against Denver last game started. But if he starts again, it's obviously a way better spot here for him. So I think he's a solid value at 4,000. Now, there's still some risk that he doesn't play full minutes. Like, as you saw that last game, maybe he gets his minutes cut down a little bit, but he should see some run. Just a way better matchup against Detroit than it was, going against Jokic and Aaron Gordon for him. On the Detroit side here, Cade, questionable here for this game due to left knee injury management. They benched him like the last 15 minutes of that last game, which is super wild and weird. But if he's good to go, I think he's a solid play. Now, if he's out, expect Ivy to obviously take over the point guard role. And I think they would probably slide in Sasser there at 3.7. So Sasser would be a fantastic value. Ivy would be a strong play. Really picked it up at this, the second half there. First quarter, he was absolutely god awful. And first half, he was terrible last game, but he picked it up. But yeah, a lot of interest in him. A lot of interest in Sasser if there's no Cade. Fonte, just a terrible game for him there. But if he starts again, he saw 38 minutes. So minutes are really good. He's coming in at a solid price tag. He's a shooter, but he can get the peripheral stats as well. So good amount of interest in him. Now, I know you guys might not like this, but Wiseman could definitely be a very sneaky play here. Not seen a ton of minutes, but he's seen like high teens minutes. He's been very, very good in those minutes so far. Obviously, very risky play here, but at 3.9, if you're looking for a GPP dart throw play, James Wiseman looks really, really solid here. As kind of one of those guys. Who else will I mention? Duren. Obviously, Duren, 28 minutes, went for a 61 bomb. We know he has that kind of upside here, but not the best matchup going against Bam. Very good defender. And it's just one of those things, he's still not seeing the minutes. Stayed out of foul trouble. Had I think 2 fouls in the first quarter, but still, no one foul in the next 3 quarters, and he only saw 28 minutes. That's just the downside there. I really wish they would give him 35 minutes a game because he'd absolutely go off, but right now, I'm just going to stick with Ivy, Fonte, possibly Sasser if there's no Cade. Otherwise, it's just going to be those two guys. Moving on to Orlando here versus Toronto. Orlando side, Paolo's priced up to 8.9. I still think it's a fine play. He's not going to have any ownership there at that price tag. I think people would rather go to Franz, which is fair, but Paolo just has way more usage and upside, even at that price difference. Wendell, interesting in GPPs. It's just still not seen above 30 minutes. Even if he stays out of foul trouble. So it's just like a shoulder shrug play. In terms of these guards, they're going to split the minutes amongst all of them. So Suggs is probably the safest, but he's not very aggressive when he's out there. And like last game, obviously 12 shots. Game before that, 12. But the offense is going to flow through Franz and Paolo. So it's kind of hard to trust, Suggs, even at 5.3, kind of being worth it. More so if you land on him, you just feel fine. And once again, I think Isaac's probably my favorite, kind of like Charlotte, where the cheap value guy is probably my favorite on the side. Seen steady 18 minutes. He's been productive, as you can see here. Kind of like a James Wiseman, where they're very risky, not going to play a ton of minutes, not going to be super aggressive, but they've been productive recently. So I will throw him in the player pool. Moving on to Toronto here. Toronto side, Barrett out, Gary Trent questionable, Boucher still out, obviously. Quickly, once again, looks like a really good play here. Now, I will admit, Orlando does play really slow, and they're really good defense, so could be a little bit of a down side there for Quickly, but still, he's going to play all the minutes he can see. He's going to shoot the ball a ton. Has really, really good and strong upside, so he looks like a very solid play. Same thing with Kelly O. The minutes, not the most amazing, but he's one of those guys, as you can see, he can get in foul trouble, so he does fully lose minutes there. But with the start there, the past 2 games, 29 minutes, 33.5 fantasy points, 24 points, 31 minutes, 19 points, 44.5 fantasy points. So even at that 7K price tag, he's still a very, very strong option. Bruce Brown, I think, is fine. Now that they kind of have Quickly back, it does take the playmaking ability away from Bruce Brown. really salvaged his game there after starting out with 0 fantasy points in the first quarter there. It was wild to see, and, like, I think it was in, like, 8 minutes, or I think he maybe even played the whole quarter. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. But yeah, he should play mid-30s minutes. I think he's a fine play at 5.9. Nothing crazy there. It's not like an auto lock. Gary Trent Jr., if he's in, I'd have interest in him. Now, if he's out, once again, I do think Dick is probably the safe play there, 5,000. That's kind of the downside there, as you can see. Kind of scoring dependent at times. Can get some peripherals, but you really need him to hit his shots. And at 5,000, I think it's a fair price tag for for a cheaper value on the slate. Jonte's Porter has actually been super, super efficient and very, very productive. I don't know if you can trust that. I mean, we've seen a lot of games this season where he gets good run and he doesn't really do too much. So I pumped the brakes a little bit, but 4.5K, you can definitely take a shot on him. And then, I'll mention Nawara as well as McDaniels, guys who have been getting run and they've been doing decent. They're there if you're looking for some cheaper value that could, do well, especially if there's some foul trouble and some injuries. They could see a little bit more run. The Clippers, obviously, they're playing tonight, so could be one of those things where they rest either Paul George or Kawhi and they bring back Harden. So it's kind of hard to break down this team for right now because there's just so many different scenarios. But obviously, whoever is in out of this, group of three, really, really like. If it's two of them, if it's all three, then if it's all three, I don't know if there's anyone that really stands out. I think it's fine if you land on all three of them. Then Zubac should be a fine GPP option. But otherwise, if one or two of them are out, you want to load up on whoever of these star trio is in, and then you'd look to a guy like Powell off the bench, and then obviously if they start Bones again, that's who you'd look to. Possibly Coffee if they do start him, but that's kind of the scenario there. You always want to target whatever the trio is good to go. If one of them's out, two of them's out, you target the one or two that are in, and then you maybe get to a Powell or a Coffee there, or Bones, whoever kind of starts in place of the people that are out. Just absolutely stumbling over my words here. Sorry, guys. But moving on here to this Pelicans side. Once again, for the Pelicans, one of those teams you just don't feel great getting to. Zion's been the most consistent in the past week, but we know Brandon Ingram probably has the highest upside in terms of playmaking, scoring, and rebounding. They've just been involved in a lot of blowouts, as you can see. Huge blowout there, huge blowout here. Not the biggest blowout against Philly. Or actually, Philly was a blowout. Philly did come back, so made it look like it wasn't, but that was definitely a blowout. Toronto blowout, Indiana blowout. Another Indiana kind of blowout, the 9-point game. Another blowout. I mean, they've just been involved in a ton of blowouts recently, so they're not really seeing their full potential, but I mean, it's an intriguing price tag on CJ McCollum. Once again, not seeing like a ton of high scores from him fantasy point wise, but a ton of blowouts. We know he has a safe floor through rebounds and assists and can score. So interest in these guys, but nothing really stands out to me. Once again, Trey Murphy, if you expect him to continue to be hot from three, you can definitely get to him. J Val is losing the minutes. They're going to Larry Nance in the second half. So another cheap center you can get to at 3.6. They're running Najee. They're running Herb Jones. It's just fine if you land on all these guys. They're more just secondary options. Moving on to Denver here. Jokic looks fantastic here. It's a fantastic matchup against Victor here, 11.8. Obviously, huge blowout risk, but really like Jokic. Really, really like Jamal Murray here at 8.1. And then I think MPJ is a really, really strong play as well. So absolutely love all three of them. Gordon, KCP, they are there. The price on KCP is interesting, but he's obviously one of those guys not going to shoot the ball a ton. If he gets hot, from the beginning of the game, he will be a little bit more aggressive. And if he gets a couple steals, a couple of rebounds, he can definitely go for 20, 25, 30 plus. But I think it's a fine play at 4.4. Really just stick with Jokic, MPJ, and Murray. Spurs side here, Victor, Vassell are going to be your two best options and probably the only guys you want to get to. Once again, you could get to Tyus. He does flash some upside, at times, but I'd just say play it safe. If you're going to target two guys, target the top two. Otherwise, there's a lot of blowout risk here going against Denver. So could be very risky getting to these guys. Sure, you can play like a blowout slip, maybe get to a guy like Branham who could see extended run and be aggressive off the bench. But otherwise, I just don't have a ton of interest in the Spurs side if you're not going to get to Victor or Vassell. And then moving on to the last game here, Jalen Johnson is questionable with that ankle. If he's good to go and no minutes limit, him and Murray look fantastic. And then, guys like Bogdan, Capella, Hunter would be like solid secondary options. Now, if Johnson is still out, they could start Krejci like they did that last game. Played 31 minutes. Obviously, he's just not going to be super aggressive when he's out there. Kind of just more of a guy who kind of stands in the corner, stands on the side. Maybe you can hit a shot or two, play make a little bit. So an okay value, not the best. If there's no Jalen Johnson, and I think Hunter's probably my favorite play to take a shot on if there's no Jalen Johnson. If you're not going to play DeJounte there at 9.5, which it's going to be hard not to. This matchup, 9.5. He has a ton of usage here going against Utah. As you can see, playing all the minutes he can handle, shooting the ball a ton. So he's going to have a lot of ownership, but for good reason. And then moving on to the Utah side here, Sexton, George, and Collins are going to lead the way there with Clarkson off the bench, but it looks like Clarkson's going to be out for this game here. So really like Sexton, really like George here. They're going to be the main two guards. They're going to both play super aggressive, play a good amount of minutes here. They both have been very efficient the past week or two when they have been playing. So they both look really strong against this Atlanta side. Hendricks 5.2K priced up, but if he starts, I think he's fine. You just got to see with his starting lineup. Kessler could move into the starting lineup as a power forward, possibly, or even come off the bench. Still a fine GPP option. Sensabaugh, he's okay if you land him. I don't really like it. And they have been starting like Luka, Samanic, which I don't get. And that's really it. So once again, Sexton, George are my two favorite plays there. That is the slate breakdown. Hope you guys liked the video. Once again, a lot to like for this slate. I think kind of the values are kind of clear right now in terms of like Poku and possibly taking a shot on Jonathan Isaac. But obviously, we got a ton of people in great spots. A lot of blowout risk across the board. Obviously, Charlotte versus the Suns. Miami versus Detroit. Even Orlando versus Toronto. Denver versus Spurs. Atlanta versus Houston. There's some risky spots here, but it should make for an interesting slate. And it's 100K to first. So really excited for this one tomorrow. Hope you guys like the video. I'll have my core plays out 10 to 15 minutes before the slate starts. See you guys tomorrow.